My manipulative ex sent me a box full of apologies 5 years after we broke up. The problem is, she died a year ago. It's been 5 years. 5 years since I finally, painfully, and messily extracted myself from that relationship. It was one of those relationships that doesn't just end, it leaves a crater. She was my first real love, and she was a master of a quiet, insidious kind of cruelty. A manipulator of the highest order. Every argument was my fault. Every insecurity I had was a weapon she would sharpen and use against me. By the end, I was a hollowed-out, anxious wreck of a person. It took me years of therapy, of rebuilding my own self-worth from the ground up to feel even remotely normal again. I hadn't seen or spoken to her in half a decade. I thought I was free. Then, last month, the box arrived. It was a small, unassuming package in my mailbox. No return address, just my name and address written in a familiar, elegant, sharp cursive that I recognized instantly. A cold, heavy feeling. A ghost of an old anxiety settled in my stomach. Her handwriting. On a small cardboard tag tied to the box with a black ribbon were 7 words, also in her hand. For all the things I should have said. My first instinct was to throw it away, unopened, to just toss it in the dumpster and pretend it never came. But I couldn't. The curiosity, the morbid need for a final, long overdue sense of closure was too strong. I took it inside. The box itself was beautiful. It was a small, ornate thing, carved from a dark, heavy wood, with intricate patterns of vines and leaves winding around its sides. It felt old, ancient even. I sat at my kitchen table, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs, and I lifted the lid. Inside, the box was empty. It was lined with a deep, dark, light-absorbing velvet. There was no letter, no trinket, no explanation, just an empty, velvet-lined box. I felt a surge of frustrated, familiar anger. Of course. Even now, 5 years later, she was still playing games, sending a cryptic, beautiful, and ultimately empty gesture. It was so perfectly her. I put the box on a bookshelf in my living room, a strange, dark little monument to a past I was trying to forget, and I did my best to put it out of my mind. The next morning, I was getting ready for work. I walked past the bookshelf, and something caught my eye. There was a small, folded piece of white paper sitting in the center of the box's dark velvet lining. I froze. I knew with an absolute certainty that the box had been empty when I went to bed. My apartment door was locked. No one had been in. My hands were trembling as I reached for it. I unfolded the paper. On it, in that same sharp, elegant cursive, was a single sentence. "I'm sorry for making you feel small at that dinner party with your friends." I stared at the note, my mind reeling. The dinner party. It had been 7 years ago. A small gathering at a friend's apartment. She had spent the entire night subtly, skillfully undermining me in front of my oldest friends, making me the butt of a dozen gentle jokes that left me feeling like an idiot. I'd almost forgotten about it, but the apology... It was so specific, so verbatim to the conversation we'd had in the car on the way home, where I had used those exact words. "You made me feel small." I spent the rest of the day in a daze. The note folded in my pocket, a strange hot coal against my leg. When I got home from work, I went straight to the bookshelf. There was another note. "I'm sorry for reading your journal." My blood ran cold. She had always sworn she hadn't. It had been a huge fight, a suspicion I could never prove. But here it was, a confession, a posthumous admission of guilt. I checked again an hour later. Another note. "I'm sorry for lying about where I was that night." This was the rhythm of my life for the next week. The box became an endless automated apology machine. Every time I looked, a new note, a new folded piece of paper, a new shard of our toxic past would be waiting for me. At first, it was cathartic, validating. Every note was a confirmation that I hadn't been crazy, The gaslighting, the manipulation, it had all been real. It was like all the old wounds I had were finally being lanced, the poison drained away. I'm sorry I told your mother you were the one who broke her antique vase. I'm sorry I flirted with your best friend at your birthday party. I'm sorry I made you quit your painting class. But then the apologies started to get darker, more intrusive. I'm sorry for watching you while you slept. I found that one on a Saturday morning. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. I remembered waking up sometimes in the dead of night with the feeling of being watched, only to see her lying beside me, her eyes closed. I'd always dismissed it as a dream.